silent mode and enjoy this short video on the safety measures at Sasana Kijang.
Welcome to Sasana Kijang, a center of knowledge and learning excellence established by Bank Negara, Malaysia. Vehicles entering the premises will be subject to a security inspection at all entrances. All guests are required to walk through the metal detector as part of the security requirements. Guest access to level 5 and the office areas from levels 1 to 5 are strictly prohibited without prior approval. Sasana Kijang is a Wi-Fi enabled area. Please contact the event owner for the Wi-Fi password. Please set your handphone on silent mode to ensure the smooth running of events. Our auditorium seats are equipped with microphones for audience participation. To use the microphone, press the button located on the panel at the side of your seat. A red light indicates that the microphone is ready for use. Press the same button to deactivate the microphone. Smoking is strictly prohibited indoors. Should you wish to smoke, please proceed to the designated smoking areas. In case of an emergency, please remain calm and follow the directions of the safety officer. In the event of a fire or bomb threat, immediate evacuation is required. During a medical emergency, please contact the security counter or any of the available auxiliary police for medical emergency response. Thank you, and we hope you enjoy your experience at Sasana Kijang.
announcing the arrival of Mr. Adnan Zailani Muhammad Zahid, Assistant Governor of Bank Negara Malaysia. Mr. Adnan Zailani Muhammad Zahid, Assistant Governor, Bank Negara Malaysia. Mr. Patrick Tiao, Chairman of the ASEAN Insurance Council. Ibu Evelina Petrushka, Secretary General of the ASEAN Insurance Council. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning and welcome to the opening ceremony of the 21st ASEAN Insurance Regulators Meeting, the 44th ASEAN Insurance Council meeting, and the 3rd ASEAN Insurance Summit here in Sasana Kijang, Bank Negara Malaysia. Bank Negara Malaysia is pleased to be hosting this year's ASEAN Insurance Regulators Meeting, a platform for our regional regulators to share updates on regulatory and developmental initiatives in the insurance industry. To begin our ceremony today, I would like to invite Ibu Evelina Petrushka, Secretary General of the ASEAN Insurance Council, to deliver her welcome address.
Guest of honor, Mr. Adnan Zailani, Assistant Governor of Bank Negara Malaysia. Ms. Lau Ching Ching, Director of Insurance Development Department, Bank Negara Malaysia. Mr. Ho Kwang Trung, Director of Market Integration, ASEAN Economic Community Department, ASEAN Secretariat. Ms. Porwansa Sirinupongs, Co-Chair of the Working Committee on Financial Services Liberalization and Senior Expert on International Financial and Fiscal Policy Office, Ministry of Finance of Thailand. ASEAN Insurance Regulators, Mr. Patrick Teo, Chairman of AIC, ASEAN Insurance Council, Chairman of all ASEAN Insurance Associations, Mr. Don Kanek, Chairman of EU-ASEAN Business Council, Ms. Diana Guzman, Regional Acceleration Lead, Sustainable Development Investment Partnership, World Economic Forum. Good morning to you all and welcome to a beautiful place in Bank Negara, Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the ASEAN Insurance Council, I would like to welcome all of you to the 21st ASEAN Insurance Regulators Meeting, 44th ASEAN Insurance Meeting, and 3rd ASEAN Insurance Summit here in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. It is a great pleasure to have all of you here the most important decision makers in the industry in the East ASEAN region. We really hope that each summit is able to bring new direction, trends, and latest developments that are highly relevant to the insurance industry. Allow me to briefly refresh our memories on the first two summits. The inaugural summit back in 2014 in Singapore focused on the opportunities and challenges for the insurance industry that we should pay our attention to, particularly in facing the end of 2015, when the ASEAN Economic Community was to be established. During the summit, there was a panel discussion in which the ASEAN insurance regulators shared their views and vision on how insurance industry in the region would play a role in the AEC. The aim was to increase awareness on the existence of AEC Blueprint. The second summit was in Yogyakarta in 2016 and aimed at how the insurance industry could play a bigger role and more strategic role to support economic growth. Therefore, positioning the insurance industry as an intermediary institution side by side with banking sector so that it can support the deepening of capital market is an important agenda. This year's summit is expected to come up with strategic recommendations on how the fourth industrial revolution could be fully utilized to expand and grow the insurance sector. In the era of 4IR, the disruptive technologies and trends such as Internet of Things, robotic technology, virtual reality, and artificial intelligence are completely changing the way we live and do business. Those who are able to adapt by adopting technology and preparing the necessary human skills will be able to reap massive benefit, but those who fail to do so will face the end of their life cycle. The challenges now include embracing this new trend, taking advantage of the technology, and preparing the human resource. Instead of looking at 4IR as a threat, we should embrace it and take advantage to support our business. Today, on the first and second session, we will hear speakers who represent different organizations who will give their own perspective and on 4IR. We will also have perspective from younger generation who has vast experience in investments in startups in the United States and in the region, the ASEAN region. We can certainly learn from the young generations and vice versa. The AEC Blueprint 2025 promotes financial integration, financial inclusion, and financial stability as the priorities of the ASEAN financial cooperation. The ASEAN insurance sector continues to be integrated under the ASEAN Insurance Forum IFO negotiations, promotes financial inclusion by introducing microinsurance products, and support financial stability by financing the development of ASEAN infrastructure projects and acceleration of ASEAN connectivity. Given the key role that insurance industry plays, particularly in the investment capacity, we must continue to conduct more intensive consultations with governments and regulators to find ways to grow the industry even further. Given the nature and proximity of ASEAN countries, the importance of infrastructure, physical connectivity, not only physical infrastructure, but digital infrastructure cannot be stressed enough. The dream of creating a single market and single production base in the ASEAN region cannot be realized without adequate infrastructure facilities. According to recent ADB update, total infrastructure spending in the ASEAN region was 55 billion, while the estimated required annual spending for infrastructure in the region is US 157 billion. Therefore, we are currently facing an infrastructure gap of 102 billion. Ladies and gentlemen, in relation to this, I would like to introduce to you a scheme of infrastructure financing launched by World Economic Forum and OECD, called the Sustainable Development Investment Partnership. The SDIP is a platform comprised of public, philanthropic, and private entities with ambitions to scale sustainable investment in developing countries through the use of blended finance, which during the recent World Bank IMF annual meeting in Bali received a lot of attention and endorsement by key participants. The SDIP focuses on action-oriented deliverables to address regional financing challenges. In addition, it is also expected to encourage risk mitigation initiatives and policy reforms to create the enabling environment to support the objectives. SDIP has established regional hubs to capture regional perspective and address local challenges for strengthening project pipelines, mobilizing capital for projects, and contributing to local build capacity. For ASEAN, the SDIP ASEAN Hub has been formed to promote dialogue among the relevant stakeholders in the region and adoption of best practices that can increase blended finance activity and enhance the bankability of projects. The hub will coordinate communications among member institutions and organize events that require involvement of members. One particular sector that the SDIP ASEAN Hub aims to promote is infrastructure financing under the AEC. Given the infrastructure gap figure that I mentioned earlier, the opportunity to be involved is wide open. Recently, at the IMF and World Bank annual meetings in Bali, 4 leading insurance companies invested in total $224 million in state-controlled toll road operator in Indonesia. And we hope to have more private sector contribution to this investment in toll road. The third session we have speakers from IFC and private speakers to talk about blended finance. Just last Friday, I was in Vietnam representing AIC on the Infrastructure Working Group of World Economic Forum. The steering committee was hosted by Mr. Nguyen Dung, Minister of Planning and Investment at the Ministry of Planning and Investment Office in Vietnam. The IWG is a platform for business leaders and key stakeholders to provide critical input and actionable recommendations to reduce the infrastructure financing gap in Vietnam. Imagine the ASEAN insurance sector manages $438 billion, which only 2% of these funds are invested in infrastructure. Out of $438 billion, US 194 is in Singapore and 112 billion is residing in Thailand. We should together find ways to unlock these funds to support economic growth of ASEAN countries, and we believe infrastructure is key to economic growth. I call on players in our industry to learn more about opportunities that SDIP can offer to your investment activities. I am confident that our industry will become the most important component in development of infrastructure in the ASEAN region. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, now allow me to provide some updates from the bodies under AIC. The Council of Bureau has continued to work on implementing Protocol 5 on the ASEAN scheme of compulsory motor vehicles insurance of the ASEAN Framework Agreement on facilitation of goods in transit. The COB has improved coverage of compulsory cross-border motor insurance by enhancing the compulsory automobile liability insurance. The ASEAN Insurance Education Committee has finally set up ASEAN Education Master Plan in Bali, July 2018. The objective of this working committee is to work on establishing the ASEAN Education Master Plan by first mapping out the existing insurance training and certification programs currently offered by the regional training institutes and analyzing the gaps against massive changes taking place in the insurance marketplace, brought about by the Industrial Revolution. The second phase of the project will entail the committee identifying the critical job roles, and the associated competencies will be mapped out by the respective countries before the training solutions will be proposed under the Master Education Roadmap to meet training gaps for the industry to prepare itself adequately to build an ASEAN economic power. The final shape of the roadmap should be ready by next AIC meeting for adoption. In the meanwhile, the AIEC had identified 2 key priority areas for execution in 2019. One area is building up digital human capital as the industry forges ahead, digitally transform itself. The second is in the area of IFRS 17 training. For the digital skills upgrading, the committee hopes to leverage on the Digital ASEAN initiatives launched by the World Economic Forum in April this year. SEI has agreed to spearhead the initiative called Digital ASEAN Insurance, and the committee hopes to roll out the first set of programs in the digital competency space by second quarter of next year. An ASEAN digital competency framework will be developed to provide a common benchmark for qualifications. The Education Committee is committed to work with all stakeholders to groom and develop its own sustainable pool of talent. The ASEAN Natural Disaster Research Work Sharing manages risk transfers and mitigation towards disaster through catastrophic bonds. The use of catastrophic bonds is geared towards specific kind of disaster. The Catastrophic Risk Management Karma web portal promotes academic papers on natural disasters in ASEAN to market and present daily weather reports and important live earthquake alerts. And a newly formed ASEAN Reinsurance Working Group has proposed concrete refinements to reinsurance regulators that could address the region's needs for reinsurance schemes. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes my address for today. We are certain that you will benefit enormously from this summit. Please take advantage of this to learn more about what progress has been made under the ASEAN cooperation, to network with your fellow CEOs and the regulators, to think about what we together can do to grow our businesses. Thank you for your kind attention, and I hope you have a wonderful summit. Once again, I would like to thank Bank Negara Malaysia, the sponsors, Piam and Liam, for organizing these events, as well as AIC council members and speakers. And thank you, SDIP, for collaborating with AIC in establishing ASEAN Hub. And on my last note, I will call on my colleague in the private sector. Let us, hand in hand, build an industry that will support and collaborate with governments to contribute to the ASEAN economic growth. Thank you very much, and God bless you all.
Thank you, Ibu Evelina. I would like to now invite Mr. Adnan Zailani, Assistant Governor of Bank Negara Malaysia, to deliver the keynote address for this opening ceremony.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I wish to extend a very warm welcome or selamat datang to all our ASEAN colleagues and fellow Malaysians here today. Bank Negara Malaysia is honored to host the 21st ASEAN Insurance Regulators Meeting and the 44th Insurance Council meeting, again after 11 years. It is also our privilege to be part of the 3rd ASEAN Insurance Summit. I trust that the exchange of ideas and knowledge during these events will further strengthen the long tradition of close cooperation among ASEAN insurance regulators and industry players. Since its formation in 1967, ASEAN has achieved significant strides in advancing regional economic, financial cooperation and integration. This has contributed to sustained social development and stability that we see in the region over the last 5 decades. Economic improvement has seen member states grow at an average rate of over 5% and expanded over 100-fold, supported by significant intra-regional trade. In 2017, the 10 member states recorded a combined gross domestic product of close to $3 trillion. Together, the regional bloc is currently the 6th largest economy in the world, and by 2020, it's forecasted to become the 5th largest economy after the US, China, Japan, and Germany. Now, with a population of just under 650 million, ASEAN is characterized by its rising and expanding middle class. This segment will represent 2/3 of its overall population by 2030. Increasing urbanization, rising consumption levels, and a young workforce are expected to drive future growth. This forms a backdrop that will boost intra-ASEAN trade and investment. Consequently, this will further propel the region's journey to become a highly integrated and cohesive economy as envisaged in the ASEAN Economic Blueprint. Now, how has the ASEAN insurance industry fared during this period? And how will it perform going forward? And how do we want it to perform? Now, 10 years ago, the ASEAN insurance sector recorded a total premium income of $41 billion, with total assets of $185 billion. In 2017, total premium registered of $103 billion, with a total assets of $480 billion. But nevertheless, the ASEAN industry remains small. So according to Swiss Re, the combined premium volume of the ASEAN insurance market accounted for only 2.1% of the world's market share in 2017. In comparison, the insurance industries in China and Japan each accounted for 11.1% and 8.6% of the world's market share respectively. Insurance penetration in the region remains low, averaging 3.6% in 2017. This is considerably well below the global average of 6.1% and the Greater Asian region's average of 5.6%. So while this represents a large gap in insurance protection in the region, this also points to significant opportunities for rapid growth and development in the near future. Ladies and gentlemen, the ASEAN insurance market hosts a diverse group of foreign players. Now, many have strong presence in the region and even pioneered the development of the insurance market in some member states. Similar to most ASEAN countries, Malaysia welcomes their participation. In 2017, foreign players represent almost half of the ASEAN insurance market participants, including via their participation in domestic companies. Now, these players have brought in sound business models. Their strengths and expertise have contributed to the development of the regional insurance industry. They have been given greater market access through liberalization measures undertaken by ASEAN countries over the years, such as that in the marine, aviation, and transit insurance segment. Nevertheless, comparing against the speed of expansion of foreign insurers in the region, one can argue that the pace at which the full translation of the corresponding benefits of the development of the local insurance market remains uneven. I would like to share 3 observations of their presence that could be relevant. First, we can acknowledge that foreign insurers have contributed positively and extensively towards the more pragmatic and contemporary regulatory enhancements. However, this also means that regulatory design is heavily influenced by them. In other words, there could be risks of regulatory capture, where policies and decisions could favor the foreign players at the expense of the local industry and public. As regulators, we have to be cognizant of these risks. It remains an ongoing challenge to balance policy trade-offs and to preserve the best interests of the general public at large. Second, foreign insurers also tend to mainly target the more profitable market segments. Using international brand recognition, they are able to capture these markets easily. Such segments include the higher net worth individuals and large and multinational corporates. The insurance needs of the lower income segment and small and medium enterprises are then left underserved. Third, many of the global players operating in ASEAN today continues to operate as foreign players and act as conduits to their head offices. Invested capital could be hedged back to their home country. Annual profits and fees received are repatriated. This in turn has resulted in, among others, persistent outflows of funds to their home countries. This practice has continued to put pressure on the host country's balance of payments. Foreign players should do more to invest in the host country and truly make the host country their home country as well. On another front, efforts should concurrently be directed towards strengthening the underwriting and retention capacity of the regional insurance and reinsurance markets. Now, what about the domestic players? Having benefited from the partnership with their foreign counterparts, domestic and homegrown insurers in ASEAN also need to do more to serve the protection and financial needs in their countries and the region. Now, having domestic players as part of the insurance landscape is a goal that is shared by most countries, if not preferred by all. The progressive approach towards integrating the regional insurance market already recognizes the unique circumstances and different stages of development in each ASEAN member state. This is intended to provide lead time to domestic players to prepare themselves for regional insurance integration. Unfortunately, many of the domestic players have yet to develop their own competitive advantage. They have yet to reach a sizable scale of operations in order to compete effectively against their foreign counterparts. As the region moves into the next phase of growth and progresses towards a more integrated market, domestic players will need to strengthen their capacity and capability or risk being driven out of the market. Now, ladies and gentlemen, ASEAN's economic and financial sector growth will see the insurance industry grow correspondingly. Given the potential, it could grow faster, but it will require the insurance industry players to step up and seize the opportunities. Amid the advent of Industry 4.0 and digitalization, much needs to be done to transform into the players for this new phase. Now, besides technology, this is also a phase where consumer interests and protecting the well-being of the underserved have become more important goals for societies. The industry needs to take notice that with the democratization of information and knowledge through technology, the balance has shifted to favor the consumers and public at large. This implies that consumer-centric propositions have become increasingly important to meet the needs and circumstances of ASEAN countries. Studies show that ASEAN is currently the world's fastest growing population of internet users, with more than 125,000 new users coming online every year. Another survey conducted in 2017 revealed that the majority of the middle-class consumers in 5 ASEAN countries are not only willing to pay extra for better quality products, they are also willing to try and frequently search for new products across various media channels. This affirms the growing power of the consumer. It also means that digitalizing insurance solutions can drive greater demand for insurance services via improved consumer experience. Here in Malaysia, these trends have resulted in, among others, a number of key policy changes and interventions that are intended to better protect the consumers of insurance. This includes the implementation of the balanced scorecard framework for agents, which aims to increase the level of professionalism of intermediaries. In addition, the upcoming introduction of the minimum allocation rate for investment-linked insurance and takaful products is aimed at safeguarding the account value of consumers. Another shift is in the growing demands by society to look into the needs of the underserved. As it is, these needs remain vast across many of our countries. Working towards promoting equitable and inclusive growth is necessary for the long-term sustainability of ASEAN. The industry should explore these less penetrated markets through new strategies and strengthen capabilities. Nonetheless, expecting markets to effectively provide for the needs of the underserved may be challenging. Markets driven by financial motives have a tendency to end up instead widening the disparities in income, equality, and socio-economic protection. Intervention or even redistribution becomes a necessary tool to correct this, rebalance societal fortunes, to enable the economically worse off to benefit and be co-opted back into the mainstream as part of an overall social agenda that promotes inclusion and cohesiveness. This goal of inclusion and cohesiveness may well be a prerequisite to truly maximizing society's economic potential. Consistent with this is another key initiative in Malaysia that targets the underserved. This is a new insurance scheme for the bottom 40% households. Supported by pioneering contributions from foreign insurers, a fund will be set up to provide insurance cover for those eligible. They will receive income support if they are diagnosed with critical illnesses or hospitalized. This policy intervention attempts to resolve the market's inability to provide such protection. Perception out there has been that this segment of the population is uninsurable, or from the perspective of insurers, too risky and likely unprofitable. We are taking a view that this is misplaced, and it will take proof to change this. Currently, we are still finalizing the details and targeting the scheme to be fully operational in early 2019. As insurance regulators, all these emerging trends place new demands on our skill sets, expertise, and competencies. We have the need to become more agile, pragmatic, and also experimental. We also need to be more open to new ways of formulating developmental policies and regulation. In this respect, we can learn from each other the evolving practices, environment, and developments that we face in our respective markets. As a group, I believe ASEAN regulators will continue to work closely towards achieving a consistent approach in driving the development of a holistic insurance ecosystem and infrastructure in the region. Regular dialogues and exchanges of information among and between regulators and the industry will continue with new areas for collaboration, particularly in the management of risk and development brought about by innovation. These include consumer data protection issues, rise of cybercrime, potential job loss or disruptions, and rapid and unexpected climate change and natural disasters. This week's ASEAN events continues our commitment towards promoting the development of the insurance sector. The challenge herein lies with ensuring that the ASEAN insurance market has the capacity to reinforce the economic growth momentum and stand well prepared against the evolving trends and risks. In doing so, we should never forget to uphold the highest standards of integrity, professionalism, and ethics. Thank you.
Thank you, Assistant Governor. And now, ladies and gentlemen, for the launch of the ASEAN Insurance Pulse 2018, Assistant Governor will be joined on stage by Mr. Patrick Tiao, Ibu Evelina, Yang Berbahagia Datuk Syarkawi Alis, Chairman of MNRB Group, Mr. Muhammaddin Marikan, President and Group Chief Executive Officer of MNRB, and Mr. Zainuddin Ishaq, President and Chief Executive Officer of Malaysian Reinsurance Berhad. May I invite Assistant Governor to press the launch button. And to officially launch the ASEAN Insurance Pulse 2018. Thank you, distinguished guests. Assistant Governor will remain on stage for a photo session. May I invite the heads of delegation from the ASEAN Insurance Regulators Meeting on stage? Thank you. May I now invite the heads of delegation from the ASEAN Insurance Council. Thank you, Assistant Governor and heads of delegation. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the close of this opening ceremony. Bank Negara Malaysia wishes to thank you for your presence. We will have a 30-minute tea break before continuing with the rest of the agenda for today. For your information, the ASEAN Insurance Regulators Meeting will be held at the Conference Hall 1 at Level 1 at 10:30 a.m. Have a productive day ahead. Thank you.